Technology, the internet, GPS in the palm of your hand, autonomous operation.
Technology is a driver of our times. Since its founding in 1958 in the midst of the Cold War, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has been a driver of technology. Welcome to Voices from DARPA, a window onto the history, people, and accomplishments that have earned DARPA a place among the most admired institutions and cultures of innovation. My name is Ivan Amato, and I'm your DARPA host. In this episode of Voices from DARPA, we will hear from some of the stakeholders in an institutional 5-year experiment called the Embedded Entrepreneurship Program, EEI for short. The vision of EEI, now in its 2nd year, is to help entrepreneurs survive the unavoidable and harrowing phase of startup and entrepreneurial culture, often referred to as the Valley of Death. That's when anything, insufficient funding, poor cost projections, missed deadlines, supply chain issues, inability to scale up from a prototype phase, intellectual property disputes, market fluctuations, a federal policy change, or any number of other hazards can kill off even the best of technology ideas. Like the origin of any innovative technology, this innovative institutional concept, EEI, began as a glimmer in people's eyes, including those of Kacy Gerst, DARPA's Chief of Commercial Strategy.
The Embedded Entrepreneurship Initiative is, like anything else at DARPA, it's an experiment. We have specific metrics that we have to hit, and every year we'll continue to measure its value. We'll continue to iterate and learn to optimize this model for impact. And at the end of the 5th year, then whoever the director is at that time will take a look at it and see if it's really helping us achieve the DARPA mission of creating new capabilities that are in the hands of the warfighter and national security end users.
It's that last bit, that part about getting technologies beyond the Valley of Death and into the hands of warfighters and national security users, that EEI is designed to make happen more often than it has in the past. There are plenty of business and technology accelerator models out there. Tech transfer offices at universities try to help faculty license patents or get startups going, for one. There are various business boot camps that promise to turn technical teams into business wizards in 3 to 6 week programs. Venture capital firms bet on winners and feed those chosen companies various levels of funding and sometimes business expertise to help move concepts toward commercial products and services. Gerst says DARPA poses unique challenges when it comes to accelerating development.
In the innovation ecosystem, DARPA is very early stage. We're taking things from idea often to, proof of principle or first prototype and really understanding what performance can be gained. And that, in business terms, that's pre-seed stage. So it's unique in that it's very early. DARPA is unique in that most of its portfolio focuses on the hard tech, deep tech space that, materials science, biotechnology, microelectronics that take a long time to mature. A lot of the original business accelerators were designed for software and not hardware, and definitely not material science. And then the last reason why it's unique is that it's very high risk, but potentially high impact. And so the result of that, in my world, is that you don't see many straightforward business models where DARPA has, developed a technology that's just slightly incrementally better from what's out there today, and it nicely fits within to the existing system, the existing market system and the existing supply chain. Often DARPA is going after things that have off the charts performance, that have the potential to really upend the existing market structure, that require new thinking around business models and partnerships. Sometimes DARPA develops some really unique things where we're thinking, this could create an entirely new space, a new industry, and that needs to be, from a commercialization standpoint, supported in an entirely different way. And so we designed this program to uniquely fit the DARPA model.
EEI came out of the gates in a mad sprint. Following a pilot stage, the initiative began ramping up to full-scale status in October 2020 in what is initially planned as a 5-year institutional experiment. Already, EEI is engaged with more than 50 research teams, each one with big plans.
We have 54 research teams. Some of them are still thinking about if they should become a company. Some of them are in a corporate research lab and they're, investigating the hypothesis that there's a compelling business case here and trying to determine if they should spin it out or license it. But 54 unique technologies that we're helping plan the path forward for.
A typical EEI effort begins when a DARPA program manager, a PM, approaches Gerst and her colleagues at DARPA about a research team of scientists and engineers that the PM is working with and that has a great idea that might not make it through the valley of death without the sort of help EEI can offer. The central pillar of EEI's model, Gerst says, is to provide funding in the $250,000 range for embedding a seasoned and vetted entrepreneur into a technical team for a year or even 2 years. The embedded entrepreneur adds crucial, sober business and commercialization insight and acumen to the optimistic and often idealistic technical mindset that the researchers bring into the mix. It takes both to get promising technology into practical shape, manufactured, and into the hands of end users. Here's how Gerst explains EEI's special sauce.
One thing we're doing differently from the typical business boot camps that are out there is we're providing longer-term entrepreneurial support. A lot of the business accelerators today are, 3 weeks to 6 week programs, which didn't align well with our timeline. The second thing that we're doing that's really unique is we're running this in parallel with the research. So what our scientific teams are learning when they're going out and they're doing customer discovery, they're understanding what the market values, what features make sense, what performance envelopes are required. They're taking that learning and they're bringing it back and they're modifying their research. So their end prototype, the end result, is a lot closer to what the market would value and pay for. Running that work in parallel speeds things up significantly. That was a big problem when I first came in. Program managers were coming to me like when they had a month left on the research program and the prototype had already been built. And then we'd go out and find out it's vastly more expensive than what anyone will pay for. Or this feature that you focused most of the research effort on, they don't value, but this sub-feature that could really be optimized further, they do value. And so a lot of these teams were having to go back, rebuild a prototype to make it look more like a minimum viable product. And that's really costly and it takes time. The final thing that we did differently from others is it sounds uninteresting, but it's actually the biggest impact thing is we have paid expert mentors, paid expert business mentors. Most programs have volunteer mentors. When I was, after grad school at MIT, I worked at a MIT spin-out and we had these great volunteer mentors that helped us 1 hour a quarter. And they had these phenomenal experts and gave amazing advice that ended up making the difference for us, but we definitely didn't have access to enough of their time.
This is where a foundational component of EEI, a partnership with In-Q-Tel-Emerge, comes in. In-Q-Tel-Emerge is a subsidiary of In-Q-Tel, a more than 20-year-old nonprofit venture capital firm with roots in the intelligence community. It now has established itself as a unique place at the intersection of venture capital, government, national security, and the startup community. Scott Cunningham of In-Q-Tel-Emerge works with Gerst and her EEI team at DARPA and with DARPA program managers and their research performers. Those are the principal investigators, PIs, and other research team members that PMs contract with to investigate new technological ideas and territories.
DARPA is absolutely fantastic at coaching new technologies into being. Many of these new technologies are so new that they go into new markets. And if you know anything about getting technology to market, when you have a new technology and a new market, it's tough. There's a dramatic need for capital. It's highly risky on both the technology and market side, and that's a classic valley of death story. So what we try to do with all of our performers and with our PMs is take the PM's needs and the Department of Defense's needs, identify the risk elements in the commercialization piece, not the technical. The PM and the principal investor have that, but in the commercialization piece, and help our colleagues reduce that uncertainty, which makes it much more attractive to American investors. So if you have a new widget or even a new vaccine type or a new way to get a vaccine or a new way to interfere in a supply chain or coax something out of a supply chain, there's an element of risk. It doesn't match up, and you have to, does it just drop into the current supply chain, or is it very different? To the extent it's different, you need somebody to think through all the different pieces, the regulatory piece, the logistics, the infrastructure, the waste, all that sort of stuff. So we work with performers and work with the program managers to identify those elements and work on them. That includes things like intellectual property strategies, market segmentations, finding people to put together the right pitch deck for them, and then actually matching up with people who have money.
Those business-savvy people Cunningham refers to constitute primary ingredients of what Gerst and her EEI colleagues hope will become their lasting contribution to DARPA's track record of delivering new technologies to warfighters and, not infrequently, to the public at large.
These are not people employed at all by In-Q-Tel or by DARPA. These are people that we intend to embed so that all their work products become the work product and owned by and are the confidential information of the company itself. So where we find these people, we make suggestions. The performers, if they can find them, make suggestions. There are some performers in certain locations, San Francisco, Bay Area, Boston, that there's a good environment around for entrepreneurs, and it's easier to find people. Folks that we support in more remote locations which don't have that ecosystem, we go out and find individuals that they could consider, and they do the interviewing, they do the hiring, and then we simply provide a non-object to make sure that the people that are being hired are actually capable and competent at doing the elements of our work statement that we're encouraging them to do.
We are talking DARPA here, so that means we are talking about visionary defense technologies, or at least technologies that are very hard to realize. So the portfolio that Gerst, Cunningham, and their EEI colleagues is hoping to usher into field operation and commercial reality sounds like a technophile's wonderland.
Many of them are involved in warfighter performance, everything from sleep to vaccines, to making sure our guys, if they end up in a faraway place and get exposed to unusual things, that we can detect it, that we can actually make sure their bodies are capable of responding to it in unique ways. We are working with operational biotech, supporting our troops in physical structures. Can we create novel structures to, as you land a helicopter, to decrease the dust in the air using biologicals, some nutrients that coalesce the sand underneath the helicopter and keep dust down? Can we create artificial reefs to both land on and protect against global warming? Can we make bricks in faraway places without cement and lower carbon footprints and create and coalesce aggregate materials and low carbon ways of doing this? Each of these is a specific company and a specific embedded entrepreneur that we have supported. In addition, some things that your listeners may find slightly odd, we support individuals who are bringing materials to agricultural uses in the conversion of materials that are contaminated with such things as mycotoxin into high quality ingredients by feeding through insects.
One company that has scored some of the earliest successes with its participation in EEI is Embody, a biotech firm based in Norfolk, Virginia. In 2020, the company launched its FDA-approved orthopedic surgery product called Tapestry. Already, in more than 200 patients, the technology is showing promise for greatly improving the repair of tendon and ligament injuries, which are common in both athletes and warfighters.
Let me tell you about Embody's kind of technological approach.
That's Jeff Conroy, Embody's Chief Executive Officer, which makes him the company's #1 storyteller. He says the company's partnership with DARPA began when it was selected in 2015 as a performer for the Atoms to Product program, a typically ambitious program in the agency's Defense Sciences Office. The program ran from 2015 to 2020. As the program's name suggests, it was all about building things with atomic-level fabrication control. Here's how Conroy explains the basic technology behind the company's new orthopedic surgery product.
When we were funded under the Atoms to Products program from DARPA, it was basically a molecular-level additive manufacturing program. So we were effectively funded to innovate in manufacturing methods using materials at the molecular level to build structures. In our case, it just so happens that we chose to use a biologic molecule, collagen, as our substrate and develop a manufacturing method to engineer surgical implants that would cause your own cells to grow new tendon and ligament tissue over a surgical repair. And so we use clinical grade collagen. We combine it with another polymer. We create a copolymer in a benign solvent chemistry. And then we developed kind of a modified electrospinning, pneumospinning technology where we reinvented the physical structure of the system, the solvent chemistry, the material science in terms of everything we could have understood in terms of possible combinations of polymers and collagen until we found the right tunable characteristics to engineer fibers that allowed us to build this surgical implant that really mimics the native microarchitecture of your own tendon tissue. And so we used manufacturing technology and a biologic material and biomaterials to engineer these structures which harness your own body's power and your own cell's power to grow new tendon tissue.
In other words, typical DARPA super cool technology. Helping companies prove an audacious concept is what DARPA programs like the Atoms to Product program are all about. But Conroy notes that small companies like his not only have to traverse a technological valley of death, but to be fully successful, a translational and commercialization valley of death as well.
EEI was presented to us as an opportunity to get an additional resource, was the $250,000 that we were able to use to support the hiring of a chief commercial officer. And at a point in time, 18 months before a product launch, where that person could have a tremendous multiplier effect in terms of preparing to be commercial, building early relationships, building clinical relationships, building all of the framework for commercial success that you don't think about. Customer service, how do we take orders, how do we do training, how do we service and support customers, well beyond the positioning and the differentiation. What I can tell you is that it turned into one of the best decisions we made as a team here in our 6-year history, because we needed to refine the story. We needed to get our tentacles into the marketplace. We needed to engage surgeons earlier. The result was not only was able to bring a seasoned executive, Rob Brown, who's our chief commercial officer, I was able to recruit a real high performance executive. And at the same time, we were able to discover new opportunities for our business.
Now, there are plenty of companies with great ideas and an abundance of science and engineering talent, but that still lack the knowledge, skill set, and relevant experience to get all of that brilliance to the finish line, whether that be a new way to make missile fuel or an autonomous naval vessel, or, in Embody's case, a new FDA-approved biomaterial-based implant for, in effect, getting damaged tendons and ligaments to repair themselves. Conroy says the boots-on-the-ground data from surgeons and their patients since the product's launch in late 2020 is heartening.
We've had a tremendous response after launching the product at the end of 2020. Now we've completed our first 200 patients. We'll do just about 500 patients this year. And we're able to demonstrate that in 30 to 50 weeks, our implant is gone and the patient is left with new aligned connective tissue, and that is expressing native collagen in place. So we've created a mechanism to stimulate new natural tissue growth that thickens a surgical repair. And over time, what we hope to prove is that we've reduced the patient's risk of re-injury and we've accelerated the opportunity to return to normal activity. That's kind of the background on the technology that was funded by DARPA and how we translated that investment into producing FDA-regulated medical devices, really for the benefit of sports medicine patients.
Conroy credits his young company's partnership with the Embedded Entrepreneurship Initiative as accelerating the launch of Tapestry and opening the way for other products.
We came in contact with Kacy's EEI program, and that office had a very clear mandate from the start, which was, okay, we're a funding mechanism, we fund moonshot technologies, we're great at that. We are trying to look a little bit closer to the market and understand what else do these companies need to be able to get commercial. So what are the indications of success early that will lead to commercial translation? And EEI came out of research and engagement that Kacy's office and Scott Cunningham had started. Our early EEI work was they helped us develop a very detailed market model to understand what adoption would look like, and what we could expect, what our pricing models might look like, what our revenue forecast might look like. And it was really detailed, as you would expect from DARPA, analytical tool that is eerily tracking reality as we get commercial here. So we're really happy. Fundamentally for me, DARPA has been, if not anything, one of the most important relationships in the creation of this company. And that means that not only were they a formative, validating partner in the technology and bringing a product through FDA, but they recognize that, okay, now the next set of challenges are commercial challenges. Yes, you've got to have great tech, but now you've got to have market needs that are attainable. You've got to have markets that you can, one, get your fair share, then figure out how to get more than your fair share. And EEI specifically helped us go from kind of a consultative discussion where we got input on forecasts and input on commercial models to, okay, now we're willing to put some resources directly into the company so that you can augment your team with skill sets you don't have. They're skills that you need. We're going to enable them coming into the company 18 months or at least 12 months before we would have been able to afford them ourselves. And it was transformational. It really helped us create a framework for external success, not just how do you hit a project milestone, but now how do you hit the hot buttons of your customer, and how do you start to generate the evidence that's going to help you scale and generate a long-term successful, sustainable business. So it's been a great experience to be a part of it, and really thankful for Kacy's team and John Main and the Adams to Products team and everyone at DARPA.
Embody is just one of the earliest adopters of the EEI model. There are more than 50 others, and Gerst says the target number of partner research teams by year 5 of EEI is 150. She notes that the collective portfolio of these technologies already is reflecting the broad spectrum of technology development that Mothership DARPA is known for.
We have software to identify deepfakes. We have design tools to increase the speed of designing integrated circuits. We have COVID-19 diagnostics, medical devices, quantum sensors. So it covers a pretty broad area.
Another key metric that EEI values is how much investor capital for EEI partner companies the initiative is helping to attract, especially from U.S. investors rather than foreign ones.
The biggest win for the program is that all of the funding that we've helped these teams raise, 100%, has been with U.S. investors rather than foreign investors. And, one of the main challenges that the Embedded Entrepreneurship Initiative was stood up to address was that because of that valley of death, because we had a lot of teams standing up and giving entirely technical pitches that didn't garner any investor interest, there was a lot of foreign interest and foreign funding offers into those companies. And so our initial hypothesis was, hey, if we can help them build up a compelling business plan, go-to-market strategy, then they will be able to attract U.S. investment. And after the first year of running the program, we've just concluded our first year. We've helped our EEI teams raise 20x what the government has put in through the EEI program in all U.S. funding from U.S. investors. Right now, it's at like $244 million.
But wait, there's more. As of the end of November, EEI had helped participant teams spin out more than a dozen new companies, stand up 9 manufacturing sites, and close 17 development agreements with larger companies. Gerst knows DARPA too well to go on the record saying that EEI itself will make it past its own valley of death, this 5-year experiment in which it has to show it actually helps DARPA succeed in its mission. But DARPA is future-oriented and optimistic, and so is Kacy.
So I hope that when our whole team, the whole EEI founding team, when we look back, we're old and we're looking back on our lives, I hope we can say, yeah, that made a huge difference. And there already are several companies that have come out of this where we can say that wouldn't exist without this resource. And what we did was really important, thinking through this new model. Or that would probably exist, but it would be owned by one of our adversaries, and now it's based in the U.S.
Thanks, listeners, for sharing this time with me. I hope you join us again for the next Voices from DARPA. For more information about DARPA and the many breakthrough technologies in its portfolio, visit darpa.mil. And for links that enable you to download this podcast, go to the Voices from DARPA page on DARPA's website.